Okay, I'm here at British Library with Tim Riley, who I don't think I've seen, to be very honest, since 1990. So that in itself has been wonderful before we even get going. And I'm here to ask Tim, what does video mean to Tim in terms of art? Where does it fit in art? Should it even be there? I don't know. And what particular memories does he have of first being aware of it and where it might have gone, and who were influential players in that scheme of things? That's a huge thing, I know.
Yeah.
I apologise, but I'm just trying to sort of set the overall
That's
scheme
fine.
of things.
Well, so I'm Tim Riley. It's good to meet Garant again after so many years. So, I suppose the premise is, before this, you probably have to ask yourself, what is art? How do you define art? There's no set definition of that, is there really? I mean, Andy Warhol says, art is what art is, which, implies it could be anything. It doesn't have to be defined as certain things. But I think, in answer to the first question, I was just looking before this, I realised that we were going to talk about video and art, and I think probably the first, without realising it, the first bit of video, we talk about video, it's actually film, but I'm putting them all into the same kind of basket. It would be Saul Bass on those title sequences that you used to see at the beginning of a lot of the Hitchcock films. For me, they were, so striking, and that you just kind of remember them, particularly like Vertigo, and then I suppose through music as well. And projections when you go to see bands. Those are sort of things that, particularly now, they're prevalent everywhere. I think, particularly if you go to see something electronic. So I think from a historical point of view, I don't see there's any question that video is definitely an art form, and is art in that sense. And I think anybody who tries to deny that it is, particularly in the age of digital, after the digital revolution, or the digital revolution that we're going through at the moment, it's becoming even more prevalent. And video, you have to look at TikTok, don't you? TikTok is just so massive. You might argue the content's not, top of the tree, but it's an art form, or an art, a form of art within itself. And you could argue that some of the content on there is pretty low level, but it is still, on that level, memes and things like that. Yeah.
I think I've just realised that talking to you, amongst people I've spoken to, you are the first person I've spoken to who really comes from a design background.
Yeah.
And having spent the vast majority of my career working with designers and in that area, for some reason I'd left that out of my thinking. And so, there's me sort of sitting around thinking about Nim June Pak or Andy Warhol or Bill Viola and thinking of those things which are deliberately made as art. That's what those people are. But I'd kind of forgotten all that design side of stuff, which would definitely fall into art, I think. You and I are similar-ish ages, and you may well have seen Pere Ubu when they toured, and all the stuff that got projected behind there, and the Human League when they were the original Human League, Being Boiled, the stuff that was projected behind there. And I'd kind of forgotten about that, how interesting all of that stuff was. It was amazing.
Can you define that as video though? Because it's a projection of video. Because I went to this thing the other day that was, but it was a 90, but they what's the guy's, again, I'm going to have to think of the guy's name. It was John Hoppy Hopkins, who was like he was a pioneer of the 1960s. And
yes.
Well, I went to this event, it was a documentary that had been made about him, and they projected liquid wheels on the back, so they were like the psychedelic kind of...
Yeah, the wheels and
things like that. So, I don't know whether we really would class that as video in that sense? I mean, is that just more of a kind of art
Well, the Human
projection,
League,
installation sort of thing?
well, the Human League and Pere Ubu stuff was a lot of found footage that had been edited in ways, and then whatever graphics they could manage at the time. I guess, I mean, talking to other people, they've made a distinction between film and video.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel that in our lifetime, the distinction between film and video, for me anyway, just seems to have kind of.
But how many? Yeah. I mean, how many
times?
times would you actually watch a film? Very rarely. It's usually you're usually going to be watching something that if it was originally analog, created on film, it
Yeah.
will have been transferred to video of some
Or not
format
even video, onto a hard drive now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, again, what's the definition of video? In that sense, is that the videos that we call videos now are really they're files, aren't they? They're files that I mean.
Feature films are files now.
Yeah,
They're not.
yeah.
There's not this dream of celluloid, and it doesn't really exist. And I'm sure the odd feature film still gets shot on, but the vast majority of them are digital, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. So, from that distinction, I suppose videos, not really. Film is nowadays we would see it as video in some sort of video format, wouldn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's a fair way
Yeah,
of
yeah.
wrapping it all up, and a
Yeah.
good way for me to deal with it with
Yeah,
people in
yeah.
the future. Yeah. And how you kind of where is the line between design and art and entertainment?
Design. I mean, you can have design. You can have a film that is made up of. I mean, an animation. If you do an animation, or if you do, nowadays, I mean, there's lots of animated films, aren't there, that you can see as entertainment. I mean, I suppose they'd have to have a storyline attached to them. But if you're talking about, I mean, you have a lot of these different kind of words now, like infotainment, don't you? Where you're having information, it's a portmanteau, I think you call it, where you stick the two words together. I mean, it depends on what it's used for, doesn't it? The design. I mean, are you using it to sell something, or are you using it to inform somebody of something, or are you using it to? Well, are you using it, as part of some kind of entertainment?
That's an interesting thing. Again, I was just watching a clip from a Kraftwerk show. They're on tour, and the graphics that go on behind them. I hate the word graphics, but anyway, the design sequences that go on behind them are stunning. They're absolutely stunning. And I was trying to figure out what are they? Is that art? Is that art? Does that have a place?
Yeah.
I think it does. I
Well,
think
it's also there's different levels of art, isn't there? So how I mean, you could have, I mean, there's the big one at the moment, I suppose, is that, if you look at something like the film Barbie, which, if you look at it from an awards point of view, won nothing.
Yep.
And I went to see that film, and I thought it was really good, and I thought it was really well made, some great ideas in it.
Yeah.
And you think, well, okay, it's art, but is there a kind of snobbery attached to it that says, okay, well, we can't do that because that's just, And I think that has a lot to do with it. So it depends on what level, I think people do distinguish sometimes between high art and low level, or as I say, that is TikTok. Is that an art form? Is the platform an art form, or is the actual content that's on there? Well, obviously, without any content, you don't have a platform, do you? But is the whole lot of that content, is that classed as art, or is there somebody? I mean, that's the great thing about the internet, is that you don't have curators.
Question.
You don't have curators anymore, do you?
No.
So, in the pre-digital world, everything was curated, like this place. People decide what goes into all the rooms, don't they?
Yes.
In the British Library, you've got a curator who's saying, "All right, well, we'll not show that at the moment," or "Should we buy that? Should we do that? You know, whatever." Whereas I think that was the great thing about YouTube when it first came out. It was, apart from pornography,
Yeah.
basically you could put anything you wanted on there.
Yeah.
And nobody was there saying, "Sorry, that doesn't meet the, hierarch threshold that we have." And I think it democratises it. Now, obviously, there are areas it's gone into, like, beheading videos. I mean, would you call you probably would find it difficult to class that as art, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Unless, so I think there is a distinction, but I think the point is that for ordinary people like us, like yourself, if you want to express yourself creatively, nobody's going to say, "Sorry, that's not good enough to go on YouTube," or "That's not good enough to go on TikTok," because, as I say, unless it's pornographic or, offensive based on their rules, which, let's face it, their rules are pretty lax, aren't they?
Yes.
But it is that, art can be, it's about expression, isn't it? About somebody's creativity, and who are you or anybody else to say that's not creative enough to go on there, because that's you being, you being the curator, and you're being the gatekeeper as well, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
That is not necessarily,
Yeah.
what happens. I mean, in a place like this, you probably have to have it. You have to have curation, because otherwise, if you
There's
didn't,
not enough space.
yeah. And also, you have to have somebody who knows a lot about a particular subject to say, okay, well, this is you could argue why it's justified to be in the British Library or in the Tate Gallery or whatever. Yeah, you'd have an expert on that. But whereas, we're not talking about that. And so what you probably distinguish it as is it's I'm trying to think of the right word. It's gone hold on a minute. It'll come back to me in a minute. But it's basically about anybody without any skill. And also, I think that's the thing about YouTube, is if you put something up there, you could spend years and years making it and then put it up there. There's no deadline. There's no so you've got to have it up right there by this time, or it's got to be this length, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to think of the word. It's gone. It's gone in a minute. It'll come back to me in a minute.
I suppose I think nowadays we expect it to have some kind of message, maybe. I don't think anybody gets that excited about someone painting a landscape.
No,
Unless it comes with some contextualizing message. Or
but I mean, if you go back to the YouTube thing, what was it? What was the one where he bit my finger? The famous thing that got millions and millions of views.
yes,
Now, you could never have guessed that would have got millions of views. What's it? It's not Tommy bit my finger, but
yeah,
which
I
one I'm talking
remember it.
about.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy who made that, you can't really say, "All right, well, I'm gonna make another one that's gonna do it," because
No.
he doesn't know who. You don't know who's gonna appreciate it or not. Now, whether that's art or not, it's debatable, isn't it? But it's certainly got a lot of eyeballs, didn't it? Unexpected eyeballs.
but is that entertainment or is that art? Or is it both?
I mean, I don't know if I'm in the, I mean, I could give an opinion of it, but I think it's personal, isn't it, to you? I don't think it has to be, to one person it will be, and another person it won't. But to a lot of people it will be entertainment, I would think. But you could argue it has some level of, some art,
Sure.
It has some characteristics that you could class as being art. I might be pushing it a bit too, pushing it a bit on there.
No,
But I know we know there's no right or wrong answers to this. I know.
I'm thinking that the first video art, again, video being our all-encompassing term for anything that moves, that I came across, perhaps not really realising it at the time, but was a fair number of music videos. I think if you look back at the music videos that The Cure made, or Talking Heads, or
Well,
there was some really
famous,
interesting.
probably the famous one, which is not particularly, favourite of mine, but it was the rotoscoping for Aha.
Oh yeah, yes.
I mean, you'd watch that and you thought, yeah, that's really clever. It's really good art,
Yeah.
and you would call that art.
Yes.
In that sense, in a probably quite traditional sense, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Say that this is, well, it's not just. It's that. Well, I suppose that question as well, isn't it? About what you've got the two bits that make up art in some ways. You can have conceptual, so you come up with a conceptual idea about something, which can be. It doesn't really matter what format it is, or you've got. You have got craft. So, and those two, you can be conceptual and get somebody else to do the craft for you, or you could do the craft bit and get somebody to come up with a concept. But it's probably that way around. It's probably a little bit more difficult. But I think those are probably the two elements that make it up. Is craft on its own? Is that art? Having a craft, so being able to sculpt something out, or if you're going to come up with an actual concept, an idea that is making a statement about something, rather than making craft can fit into loads of different things. You could argue a coder is a modern day craftsman, in that sense. But I thought it's that distinction between the two. I think that is that you can, I suppose if you're really good at crafting, you can still class that as art. But high art probably tends to come along with the idea of being conceptual.
Yes.
And I don't mean like conceptual art as in what the bloody hell is that? It's just a thing. I'm talking about coming up with an idea like you would do if you did a commercial. You'd have to come up with a concept for it that would say, this is my concept to sell this idea that you want to, or sell this product or this service that you want to, sell to the public. And that's art in that sense, I would say. But that's probably higher up, isn't it? Because you've got this really kind of definite conceptual sort of idea about it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. To the point where sometimes you go to a gallery and you look at something, and until you read the description, you kind of like, I have no idea what this.
Well, I mean, Andy
trying to
Warhol's
say.
a really good example because the concept is his idea of the screen. So he says, right, okay, take that photo, and I'm going to take that, I'm going to put them together. But the craft of that, he doesn't do that bit.
No.
He gets somebody else to do the screen printing. They're doing the craft of his idea.
Yes.
But they're both doing creative things.
Yes.
But Andy Warhol, you'd never hear about the printer because, well, obviously you do hear about him, but in everyday parlance, you wouldn't hear about the printer who's printed Andy Warhol's paintings. But you will hear about Andy Warhol because he came up with the ideas.
Yes.
So in that sense, you could try and sort of look at it in that sense, couldn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Yeah, and he's not the only one, is he? I mean,
No.
Damien Hirst.
No, it's just an example, yeah.
Right, and so that definitely, and going back in time, painters had lots of painters working for them, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I doubt he did the Sistine Chapel.
I'm going to do that. I'll do the face. You've got to do the background.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the best bit, and can you fill in the background?
I guess it's like doing visual effects, isn't it? You tidy up the sky, I'll do the foreground.
Yeah.
I read something yesterday which I suppose I was aware of, but not as consciously as I am now, about an artist. And what she did was she went round galleries and found people who worked there, who saw the images that were there all the time, and then took them down, and then asked people to write what it was that had been there. And these were people who saw these images every day,
Yeah.
you know, in and out all day, sometimes all day, because they
Yeah.
sat in the thing, and then she put their descriptions up in place of the picture where it was empty,
Yeah.
and next to it were these descriptions of what they were, and then there was a really small picture of what had been there. And it was amazing because, and this shouldn't be a surprise, nobody wrote anywhere near the same stuff. What your take on it, as opposed to my take on it, was really quite different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose that
And that sort of underlines your thing of anything being able to be art in a way, and
Yeah, well, I mean,
depending
I
on
think-
how you take it.
I think the camera changed everything as well, didn't it? Because art pre-camera was really just portrait painting or landscapes, and a lot of the artists were being paid by very rich people to paint them and do that. And so, in a way, you have this client and you're doing it for that. I think that when the camera came in and you got all these different art movements and things like that, then, drawing something that looks exactly like, painting something that looks exactly like something, or a person, kind of doesn't quite have the same ring when you can just take a photo of them and you can put that up there. So I think people had to start thinking in different ways, didn't they, about how to express. Picasso was a really good example, isn't it, about how, he went through all these different types of movements, in his lifetime, and he presented things in different ways, and loads of people hated it, but it didn't really matter. It was great because he was getting some sort of response.
Yes.
He was getting a reaction to it, and saying, "Oh, a kid of 3 could do that," is kind of, well, okay. Well, does that really matter?
No.
You get Paul Klee or something like that. He would he's trying all his life to go and draw like he did, like children did. He spent his adult life trying to go back to how he drew when he was a child, something like that.
Did he ever get close? Did he feel?
Yeah, well, you look at his paintings, a lot of them are, yeah. Paul Klee, sorry, not Paul Klee.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Klee, yeah.
I'll look him up. I'll look him up.
Well, I've said it the wrong way around because it's spelled, it's Paul Klee, but it's spelled Klee.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's pronounced Clay, not Clay.
Yeah.
As I said wrong first time. So, I'm still trying to think of that word, what it means. I'm trying to think of the differentiation between, say, high art and everyday art. And the words just escape me. And I'm trying to recall it, and it's finding it really annoying that I can't recall it. And I could look at them on my phone, but that might spoil the interview. But anyway, that's fine. I'll hopefully it'll come back to me in a minute.
And what was the first? What would you think of as being the first video art that you came across?
Well, I was saying, I think probably I would class that as being Saul Bass.
Saul Bass. Right, of course, yeah, the title sequences.
Something like that. Or commercials, really. Commercials that had, that weren't just, people. It was sort of animations. I mean, some of those animations that you used to get, like public information films, were quite, because they were bits of art, weren't they? They were kind of like, they were stuff I used to remember. Those little animations, they were good.
I always remember the one of the couple walking along the cliff top by the sea, and one of them saying to the other, "Oh look,
It's a little
he's
dingy.
waving at us."
Yeah, there's a little dingy over there, a little dingy. Yeah.
No, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
And I remember being so terrified by that. The force of that, the thing out there, and people not knowing that you were in trouble. But yeah, they were a definite style, weren't they?
Yeah.
Each one was, definitely being commissioned.
And they were public information. They weren't actually. They were selling. They were using entertainment and a sort of art form to inform people about certain things, weren't they? And they were entertainment, definitely. but they were also our class art because they were animation and the way that they did it and the use of colours
Yeah.
and the script and things like that. That you know, and you used to find them quite, you know, they were always kind of quite. Well, you look at them now and they're really quaint, but at the time they were interesting, you know.
Yeah, we weren't. I mean, it's quite shocking, isn't it, when my partner Joanna quite often gives me a hard time for the amount of time that I spend on a Friday evening if we're not out watching old Top of the Pops when they're on BBC4. And if you look at Top of the Pops from like the late 70s and early 80s, the number of effects in them that are just like bog standard video effects that were on a mixer because you could suddenly, as opposed to any real reason why they should be there. And it really takes you back, doesn't it? You know how limited stuff was at the time. So when you talk about those animations, you know the kind of budgets they would have had and stuff to do that. So, but they're beautiful for what they were meant to do, and the resources that people had.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a good. So I'm just trying to find this. I'm still trying to find this. I'm just trying to find that word that I was thinking about. It's not come up with it, but keep talking. We'll be right. I'm going to find it. I'll find it before the end of the interview.
And in fact, I'm trying to think. The first time I was really aware of coming across art, I guess, probably would have been as a kid watching Vision On.
Yes, yeah, that was definitely
Tony Hart. I remember, and
yeah.
It was a really forward-thinking program, wasn't it? Remember, there was a person who did sign language for it, and
I mean, there's also we probably shouldn't mention this, but
I know where you're going to go.
Rolf Harris.
Exactly.
I mean, he was definitely quite prominent at the time, wasn't he?
Huge.
He'd start this big canvas and he'd just daub this paint on, and he'd suddenly appear with this painting. I mean, obviously, he's persona non grata now for obvious reasons, but he was part of that at the time, wasn't he?
Yes. And in fact, there's that, you see it sometimes on Sky Arts, which is on Freeview, the American painter who was on PBS, who kind of did much the same as Rolf Harris, and would use massive, great, house painting brushes or something, and boom, 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 and you'd be like, oh my goodness, look what's just come out of there.
Well, they're just repeating those, I think, they were repeating on BBC4, I think, weren't they? I've forgotten the guy's name, Bob.
Yes, Bob someone.
Bob Foss, or something. Not Bob Foss, he's a director. He's a film director. Bob, I can't remember.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm still trying to find this thing. You carry on. I'm sorry. I am looking at stuff on here, so I'm not doing my social media. I'm just trying to find the bloody thing that is really annoying me. And it's just escaped me the word. And it's really annoying me. It's another term for everyday creativity, which is trying to differentiate between what somebody who's not necessarily skilled in a particular area could do, and the sort of craft fits into that as well, doesn't it? But a certain term, and strangely, it's a term I used in my PhD thesis a lot, and it's just gone out of my head, and it's really annoying.
It'll come back. You can always send it to me as well.
I can always send it to you.
Sitting here with you, I'm coming back to it again. That interesting space that design occupies, where it's sort of halfway between art and commercial art, I suppose, in some ways. Just thinking back the work that we did, when I think about the jobs we would have worked on together at Complete, when there were designers involved, there was always a sort of extra element to stuff, an extra desire to get things kind of right and to mean something more than just the person who was coming in and doing commercial for curries.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the trouble is, you're always working to a brief, and it's only as good as the brief allows you, and you can only input as much as the client allows you to do. And I think that's the difference between what we're talking about here, particularly with like the platform type, YouTube and TikTok, is that everybody has a freedom to do what they want.
Yes.
And I think that's probably a big distinction, isn't it? Is the fact that if you're getting paid for it, if you're getting paid if you're getting paid as a designer, it's because you are being asked to solve a problem that somebody's given you. Whereas actually, in the everyday kind of creativity, producing video for YouTube or whatever, the only client is you.
Yes.
Nobody's saying, "Oh, you know that bit? I know you've just, nobody from YouTube's going to come and say to you, well, you know that animation thing that you put up the other day. You couldn't just move the type down a little bit and upload it again, could you? Because because it doesn't work like because actually." It's about expression. And I think that's we've been talking about this before. I think there is a big distinction between the idea that you are working to a brief and a client, and this idea that you have this freedom.
Yes, but the first thing that you brought up was Saul Bass and the titles for a movie. And the moment you said that, again, in turn, I thought, what was another sort of title sequence that really struck me when it came out, that I was like, geez, look at that. And it was the titles for Seven, done by David Carson.
Yeah.
And just thinking, well, there's two examples of stuff that, yes, I think you were definitely placed in the area of art. But they were commissioned work. Commissioned work. But it was design. Both times it was design that really.
I actually caught the beginning of on TV the other night, Skyfall. For James Bond, and that was absolutely brilliant. I mean, that was like a long. It's probably about 2.5 minutes long, and it's a beautiful piece of art, and it was done by Daniel Kleinman, who probably used to come in to complete at some stage.
Yeah, well, he used to do live action stuff.
Yeah, and he was the director of that. He's the designer of the title sequence. And it's absolutely beautiful, and it's art. And it, all right, it was commissioned, but it was art.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something interesting though. I kind of feel. I don't know why. It's because you're here. I keep coming back to it. That strange position that design holds, where you are making art, but you're being paid for it, and it's not the same as cranking out a commercial for Currys, as I say, or a commercial for Betfred or something. There's this extra element to it.
I agree, but to an extent, there's still somebody's had to come up with an idea, even though it might be a naff idea.
Yeah.
Somebody has somewhere in some advertising agency has had to come up with. They've had to go through a process of saying, okay, who's the target audience for this? And how do we reach them? What's the best way of reaching them? And what's our idea to reach them? Is it, big type, bang, 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 zapping about all over the screen? Or is it, or is it some kind of like Hollywood movie spoof or something like that? Whatever. But there's still behind all that stuff, whether we consider it as being good or bad.
Yeah.
And that's our decision.
Yes,
but
it is.
Still, somebody has to make a decision, make creative decisions. Now, you might argue that what's creative about sticking a big logo on and bringing type over, but somebody's made that decision, haven't they, based on a set of criteria or a set of strategy that they've worked out along how to do that. So, I mean, that's important, I think, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You have that process.
Yes, choices have been made. Yeah.
And without that person, you don't really have. It's hard for you to make the product that is going to be targeted at the right people, because you just, if you make that decision, if you say, well, I think they might like it done like this, and I'm going to do it like this anyway. The likelihood is that you've got it wrong. So you have to do the research to find out who those people are, don't you?
For sure.
Kind of stuff.
For sure. I mean, that's the basis of advertising, isn't it? If you don't.
But no, I think it's the basis of lots of other stuff as well. Not just that, isn't it? It's not just advertising. I think it's the basis of, if you're going to write a book, I suppose. I mean, if you're writing a book, if you have to think about who's going to read it. I mean, I mean, some people obviously write books and they just think, I hope loads of people like it, and that's fair enough as well, isn't it?
That's a little cynical, isn't it? I mean, thinking that people start out writing a books by like, okay, my audience is going to be, and this is what I'm going to do, and
Well, I mean,
or maybe that is. People
well, I
write
think there's
books.
some writers who are like that, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, they kind of know who's read the book before, and they think, well, you know.
Yes,
I mean, it's
true.
like these people like David Bowie's always a good example, isn't it? Because he's the person who could have just kept cranking out the same Ziggy Stardust over and over again. He found the formula right, and you know, and you used to get lots of bands around that time who just cranked out the same thing, and they end up doing a tour 20 years later of like 70s bands together, you know, but they've just been doing the same thing. But Bowie was different in the sense he's going, right, okay, I've done that now, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to chuck everything away that I've done before, and I'm going to go and try a completely different area. And that's really brave, but not many people do that.
Well, I just want to go on record here, by the way, as saying, and I've said it to many people before, and sometimes people look at me strangely. I don't understand why. Show me another artist who has a range of work to match David Bowie's between 1970 and 1981. All the different places he went, as you say, that he could have stuck with pretty much any one of them, but he didn't. He hit all of those.
Yeah, well, you
and
could
that
talk
to
about
me
bands.
is an amazing
You
thing.
could talk about bands. I mean, you could argue the Beatles span was pretty broad, you know, and that was earlier. You could
broad,
probably argue there's a period of the Rolling Stones where they, you know, I mean, okay,
They
you
didn't
still
hit
got-
as many genres,
No,
though.
maybe
The
not.
number of
Maybe
places
not.
that David Bowie
Maybe
went
not.
was just
Maybe not.
quite
Yeah,
remarkable,
maybe.
I think.
Yeah, maybe not.
You know, in a space of,
Yeah, you're
of
probably
10,
right.
11 years. I mean,
Probably right,
really,
yeah.
a really remarkable body of
Yeah, you're probably right.
of
To
work.
go to, you know, it's a brave thing to bring out an album with one side that is just sort of ambient electronic music.
Yes.
You've got two albums out with that.
Yes.
Two albums out with one side that's just electronic, you know, minimalist sort of electronic music. You know, it's unusual. But,
Okay, here's somewhere where I haven't been with anybody, but you're talking about the way people make things and decisions being made and stuff. And you know, there's a ton of criticism, isn't there, of generative AI and work made that way. And I feel like I disagree with it, frankly. I feel like you can't just walk up to ChatGPT and say, make me an awesome image. Or you can, but you're not going to get anything.
Well, it's the
in particular.
prompts.
So there's a very definite art, I feel,
Yeah, well,
to the prompts.
Well, it's another skill that you have to learn, isn't it?
Yes.
You have to learn what the correct prompts are to get out what you want at the end.
Yeah.
So you're using a tool, and it's a very sophisticated tool.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I suppose you could. I mean, it is. I mean, that's always the thing about software, isn't it? You know, and I always say to my students, I said to them, put your laptops down. We don't open Photoshop. Put it down. You're going to put them to one side. Here's a piece of paper, and here's a pen. And I want you to come up with some ideas on that. I want you to come up and write your ideas down, because as soon as you open up Photoshop, you've then narrowed your thoughts, because you're then thinking within the realm of this piece of software.
Well, you've chosen your tool set in advance,
by
haven't
all
you?
means, use that tool later on if you need it, but you don't even know if you need it yet because you haven't even come up with the idea.
Yep.
You know, so, you know, I'd say, you know, you are just restricting everything by saying, well, we just don't like Photoshop, I'm going to do a few mock-ups. It's like, well, no, actually, by all means do that later, but there's a stage before that, and you're missing that important stage out, where you're coming up with the idea, the concept. It might not even be, you know, you might not even think that it needs to be, it might just be like a sound, you know, for all you know. But you're not going to get that if you open Photoshop. I mean, I'm just using Photoshop as an example.
Yep.
And I think that, you know, again, AI is, you know, it's going to be incredibly useful. You know, it is. It speeds up so much stuff. And, you know, I think I saw it on this, there was a thing on the internet. In fact, I might even have it on my phone. I think I copied it just because I thought it was quite an interesting image. Let me see if I can find it. Obviously, the video up there.
No, don't worry.
Have I got it on here? Oh no, I don't think it's on this one. I think I put it on I think it's on my other one. But basically what it is, it's like a historical thing. So it starts off, where the printing press comes in, and people will just say, oh God, no, it's going to be terrible, it's going to spoil. Actually, no, it goes before that. It's like when you write things down. So in the sort of Roman era, when you started writing things down, you say, oh no, you can't write things down, it's going to spoil the way that our speech and how it is. Then the printing press comes in and they go, oh no, you can't bring that in because all the scribes are going to go out of work, and what are you going to do about that? And it basically goes through all the different stages that we, like Industrial Revolution, things like that. And it's the same argument. It's like, this new technology can't come in because it changes. It's going to change things too much. But yet, as we've seen with all of these technologies, they've all kind of fitted in eventually. Yeah, there are really scary bits about AI.
Oh, for sure.
But there's also brilliant bits about it. But it's like social media, isn't it? You can't just say all social media is rubbish, or because in some places it's really good. I mean, the bad sides of it are always highlighted because that's the way media tend to, look at things and look at the bad things rather than, they're not going to highlight all the good things because people don't want to hear about it.
Well, just like when you turn on the news, you don't have a news full of good news, do you? And if you do have good news on, it's always a last story and it's kind of jokey.
It's about how you use it, isn't it? Definitely about how you use it. And and I mean, it'd be interesting to see how video works with that as well.
Yeah.
Because you see, do you know the... do you know that it was a site that was set up to test the Google browser. What is it? Chrome. And it's basically it's a mashup of lots of different data. That so what you do right at the beginning, and it's to a big piece of music by what are they called? I'll find it for you. I'll find it for you in a minute. And basically, this is kind of the new sort of thing. It's sort of like the mashup. So it's a mashup video. So you're taking it's taking information from lots of different databases and pulling it all together and making a unique video for you based on the information that you put into it. So you put in, you show the road. You type in the road where your first house, where you lived at your first house. So you type that in, plays through the video, and then loads of screens come up. And then halfway through, it uses Google Maps and Google Street Map to show you the place where you used to live. So it's an incredible bit of mashup technology that is unique to each person who uses it. And I mean, I think that's kind of like, we're getting into that, and that's video because it's on I'm trying to think of the name of the bloody band now. So I've gone on a bit of a Arcade Fire.
Yeah. Okay.
Arcade Fire. It's an Arcade Fire track, and it is built by Google to test HTML5, I think it was, technology.
Right.
And just pull in all these different bits. And I show it to my students all the time, and it's probably about 7 or 8 years old now, but it's still incredible sort of experience. I mean, you have to use Chrome, and you have to have lots of bandwidth to do it because it's pulling up all these screens. But I actually had, when I used it the first time, I had quite an emotional sort of response to it because it takes you to the house on the road. So it took me to my house on the road I lived in, just outside Blackburn, and and obviously it's from Google Maps, and you go, oh my God, that's where I used to live. And it's like, the first time I saw it, and so I think things like that, when you actually have these bits of technology now that can tell stories and give you an emotional connection based on you as an individual, not just as an experience. You know, I mean, there's that new film out, isn't there, by there's a new film out by Brian, about a documentary about Brian Eno.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, and it's generative, so every time you watch it, it's slightly different.
Oh, I have read that there was a film that every time you
so
see it,
you know,
it's
that's a
different.
kind of that's another. I mean, no, it's not necessarily AI, but it's about these making connections with the viewer that are personal to them, or making changes based on the environment that they're in, which I think are, like, you know, incredible for the future, aren't they?
Well, it's no surprise, I suppose, to find Brian Eno somewhere in there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not. He didn't make the documentary. It's about him.
Okay. So was
obviously-
he not involved?
Yeah, he was
in
involved with it.
I can't imagine
Yeah,
he would.
yeah, he was involved with it. But obviously, if you're making a documentary about yourself, you have to have a little bit of distance.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would seem as a bit sycophantic, wouldn't it? You know? But you're not sycophantic. You know what I mean? What is it when you peer in the mirror all the time?
A vanity project.
Yeah, vanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, vanity. Sort of things. So I think those bits are the really interesting bits that are happening, you know, in video and things like that, where you kind of personalise them and you do these data mashups. Data internet mashups are just fantastic. Where you
Yeah, I mean, that sounds...
you know, from different databases, because that's all it is, really. When you have a website, you're just pulling in stuff
from the whole world.
Yeah, from wherever it's stored into it, you know, onto your screen. The screen that's in front of you, it's, you know, I mean, I think that's incredible.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
As soon as I'm out of here, I'm going to try that. Is it still up and running?
Yeah, I'll find it for you in a minute. What is it called? It's called... what's the name of the browser?
What's it called?
What's the name of the browser?
Chrome.
Chrome, that's it. Chrome Experiment, okay. Oh yeah, there you go. It's called The Wilderness Downtown by Google Creative Lab.
Okay, The Wilderness Downtown.
You won't be able to show it on here.
Yeah.
But you play it. You just have to go in there, and it won't
do
play
your
on here. I
stuff.
don't think. Because I don't think I've got enough.
The Wilderness of Downtown.
So yeah, so you launch it.
Google Labs has,
it
by
won't
the way,
do it
a
on here.
bunch of other interesting stuff in
Yeah.
there. Things that they've kind of, you know, played with and then just...
So I can't do it on there. I have to do it obviously in Chrome browser.
Yeah.
But basically, you want to just try it. It's really fantastic. So it's called thewildernessdowntown.com. And you need to make sure you've got a really good internet connection. And it's a fantastic experience. I think you have to draw on the screen as well. You have to use your mouse and you draw on the screen, and it'll email you the drawing that you've just done. It's just like incredible, you know. And it's like a personal kind of journey you have with this thing. Yeah, it's really good, really good.
I feel like a few years ago there were a lot of those experiential kind of things going on, and that for some reason people seem to have lost interest a bit in that kind of stuff. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just because it's so much easier for people to make their own things now, that people are more interested in just making their stuff, and platforms are so prevalent, aren't they? You know, like wherever you feel your home is, Pinterest or
I mean, it's so easy to
TikTok or
make things,
YouTube. Yeah.
isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's so easy to make things.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, you know, on our phones, we have a better camera than
Yeah.
you and I ever came across when
Yeah.
we were working, apart from the best 35mm movie cameras.
The camera on this new one is just out of this world. You know, I mean, the video is just incredible. Still trying to think of that word. And it's just,
So when you're talking to your students, what do you say to them about AI? How
Well-
have you incorporated that into what you do? Or
well, we're
what
still
you do?
doing that at the moment. We're still coming up with rules as well. We're coming up with, you know, we have to set some university faculty rules about what you can and you can't do. We encourage people to use it, but we have found that certainly with essays and dissertations that we're getting so many more now that are being written by AI or they've been bought. And they're kind of fairly quite easy to spot really at the moment because, well, one of the main reasons is that you can tell that student's not written it. He's far too well written for the person who's done it. That's the big giveaway.
Yeah.
But also there are other ways of doing it because often once you start delving into it and you start looking at the links that they put in there, you know, so when you've got to you have to add Harvard referencing.
Yes.
But they don't. If you click on them, they often don't. They take to something that's irrelevant to what they're talking about. So that's a big red flag.
People haven't checked their links.
Well, because they just do it. So yeah. So you know, you put it in there. Because the thing is, they probably don't even know how to do it because they just ask.
You can't check anything you get from
well,
anywhere.
I know you'd think so, wouldn't you? You'd think so, but you know, a lot of our students haven't done that. But we do encourage them to use it for, you know, repetitive tasks, or you know, to search for things, or
For search.
yeah, you know. So there are certain areas that we think are acceptable. Again, so it's not you're saying right, okay, you can't, you know, you clearly can't get it to write the whole thing for you, and you know the next thing is you get them in and you say, okay, we'll start to, so on page 3 you've written about, and then you know you ask them to explain why they've written that, and they can't do it because they haven't done it.
Because they don't know.
No.
That's interesting. Well, I guess it's inevitable though, isn't it? I mean, it's a shortcut, isn't it? And some people always look for shortcuts and easier way.
Yeah. So, I'm still trying to think of that word. Can't look at it now.
I'm also kind of interested in thinking that when you think back to the 60s, 70s, when maybe the majority of early video and film art started happening, I think it's a fair thing to call it the 60s, say, from there onwards. I feel it's a bit like early editing in the world we were in that you were driven a lot by the technical constraints of what could be done and what have you. You know, so if you wanted to make an art film, you might well end up spending 80% of your time just trying to master and be the master of the tools that you're struggling to use, and you know, and the generally not great response to light of Super 8 film, for instance, or just the same as if you think about the oldest editors that you and I came across. They were much more technicians than artists, because you needed to understand electronics and that kind of thing more than how to make a great program.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think if you're still in broadcasting, I mean, I've met some people who've said that I can't deal with it now because it's just so many different formats and so many different, you know, ratios. It's just like, it's too much. It's like I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to know about all that sort of stuff. It's too much.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that a lot of it now, a lot of the content that's being created, video content that's being created, it's being created for it's the amount, you know, that they. So they're always, rather than quality, it's quality has been pushed to the, you know, bottom really over, you know, the amount of so you know, I mean, I know that there's lots of places you could go and you'd make videos for say if you're doing a sports channel or you know, an online sports channel.
Yep.
Then they want you to produce like a half an hour one every week, even though nobody's watching them.
Yep.
So it's, you know, the quantity over quality in that sense. And it's like, well, you know, you must be able to see that hardly anybody, you know, that's the great thing about video. You know, you can track how many people are watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, well, surely it's a waste of money. You keep producing all this content when nobody's watching. You know, and I think that's the thing that the digital, some companies haven't actually worked out. They haven't realised that just because they've got 100 videos that somebody could watch who's maybe subscribing to their channel, if they're all rubbish, you know, they've just been wasting their time, haven't they?
Yes.
You know, hacking them out and, you know, working overnight to get these things done, and nobody's watching them. It's not like the old days in broadcasting where, you know, you actually had to have a certain quality, and it would be checked and double checked. Whereas there's a lot of sort of just hacking this stuff out.
Well, it's really interesting you say that, because I feel one of the reasons that I really lost interest in production for advertising and stuff was it went from these, if you were lucky enough to work on great work, it went from these very crafted pieces that then had a lifetime of 13 weeks. You know, they'd run for a quarter, unless you're making commercial for the Mirror or something, which is, you know, very disposable. But even then, that was, you know, 2 or 3 days. But generally, commercials ran for 3 months. And then instead being asked, could you make 28 pieces that we're going to run just for a week, and then they'll never... So really, each piece had a, you know, they appear sequentially.
Yeah.
Each piece really had a life of a couple of hours or something,
Yeah.
really, and then they're done. And being able to wrap my head around the idea of making those, but giving them the amount of attention that 2 hours is worth, and that there's money for, as opposed to wanting to craft it. And I didn't manage to wrap my head around that, and so I felt like I floundered at that point. That I didn't want to be a part of it. Then it didn't sit comfortably with me. Instead of just embracing it and going, well, hey, that's the way we're talking to each other now. It's a different way. You've got to embrace it and figure out how you do make it be noticeable and interesting to people and stuff. And clearly there is a way, because stuff's being sold and people are buying things and people are aware of either campaigns that run that way or influencers or whatever.
So, you know, another thing we haven't spoken about, which I think is quite interesting, is this... so what are they called? They're called... digital art, in the sense of, you know, you can buy
NFTs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I went around this exhibition recently, and you could buy a looping video that is
a non-fungible token.
Yeah. An NFT.
Yeah.
I mean, they're an interesting area within this video thing that you're talking about, aren't they?
Yeah, and I haven't quite wrapped my head around why, how are they different than just, if I just make you a video, an interesting video, you know, Garrett's take on this or whatever, and just
you can't copy it. That's the thing, I think, isn't it?
Oh, you can't copy them.
Well, although, you know, basically what happens is people just make 20 different slight variants of it and flog them. But you are supposedly meant to get a unique piece of video,
which exists on a blockchain to track it, so that you...
The blockchain's a really interesting sort of...
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Subject, and how that works, and how, you know, and whether this idea of NFTs as, you know, an investment, whether it's just like, you know...
Nonsense or
a load of nonsense, yeah.
It's hard to know, isn't it? Because I feel everything to do with blockchain has become somewhat soured by its much bigger connection with crypto. And so, because people are so dubious about crypto...
As I understand it, crypto's a part of blockchain, isn't it? In that sense, because blockchain technology is what they use for crypto.
For tracking crypto, yes.
Blockchain technology can be used for so many other things. So
it is, but every time you try and mention it, people just go, "Oh, crypto." And
yeah, I know, but in actual
wrong,
fact, but what they're doing is they're being blind to the actual, because it's got fantastic potential.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know, but not you know, you have to kind of put the crypto stuff to one side and go, how can we use this? You know, really, you know, well. in other ways, you know. And I think like music collection was, people were saying, is another one that might be a way in the future about how you keep your copyright for your for music makers. For copyright, things like that.
That is interesting. Yeah.
So you know that's another use for, and also, well, you know, could be for videos as well. And it could quite easily fit in, you know, your copyright of, you know, for you know, pieces of video.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has got an incredible, and I think that you know, that's another area within your discussion that's you know, interesting and probably not even been touched on enough at the moment.
No, it's certainly not touched on at school. They don't. No one's ever said anything about it. No. And it is interesting. It is. Well, anything new that's changing is interesting. Is worth looking at, considering, having a look at, just to try and understand what it might be able to do. You never know what anyone's going to do with anything, do you?
So like the ledger, it's that ledger thing, which is, you know, I mean, I think a lot of people find it quite scary, blockchain, but actually that's because of the crypto bit.
Yes.
You take the crypto bit out of it, or you know, you can't take it out. But what I'm saying is, you put that to one side and you actually look at, okay, well, how can this be used? And we haven't been creative. You know, it's about creativity. It's about being creative with the technology and how to use it.
Yep.
You know, it's a bit like when the internet first came out. They were dubious about whether they would actually take off, because the only people making money out of it were porn sites.
Yeah.
And then as it started to mature, people realised that actually, you know, that just, you know, it all the other bits that it could do took over. And I think that's the same thing. It's the same bit. Well, you know, obviously the crypto bit is really like what the porn was in the early days of the internet, you know. And this is about saying, well, look, we've got this fantastic technology. How do we use it in better ways, you know?
And I'm sure more interesting ways will come up than NFT. I mean, I think that's just a really early start, isn't it? Yeah. Touching on something you said earlier, by the way, when we first sat down, before we started recording, and you were talking about music and how diverse it is now compared to when we... Growing up, I feel like there were only ever at any one time, you know, maybe 3 or 4 tribes, really. You know, and you kind of identified yourself by the album that you carried under your arm to school, didn't you? You know, part of an album was the fact that it was 12 inches big. So 12 inches by 12 inches, that's a fair size canvas.
Yeah.
And you could walk around with something on your arm, couldn't you? And it said, you know, I like The Who, I like The Clash, I like, you know, whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, culturally, the subcultures that you had as well, but in that sense, that if you either had to like disco or like punk.
Yes.
But if you're one of these people who says, well, I like both, that made you even more weird than
where did you fit?
Than the view from one of the other subculture of the other ones that were going on. I think, you know, it sort of seems really odd.
I always felt that Manchester did a much better job of making that happen than London.
Yeah.
I don't really think of London and having mastered that, but I always felt there was stuff going on in Manchester. Manchester and Leeds.
That was a bit of Manchester. That's where proper punk happened. Nice sort of like Vivienne Westwood, you know,
dressing up,
flamboyant dressing up, you know, selling overpriced fashion.
Yeah.
You know, it's like proper going down the second-hand shops and actually going and buying stuff in second-hand shops and living like that. Not, you know, and it lasted a bit longer, I think, up north. The one down south really didn't last that long, did it? Because
no, it was gone in 2 years, wasn't it?
Yeah. Whereas I think it actually, that's what produced. I mean, I suppose you could argue it was post-punk, but actually, you know, the bands that came out of Manchester were, you know, arguably as good, if not better than the London ones, really.
Marky Smith kept it going till the day he died, really. I would say, and John Cooper Clarke still going.
Yeah. Well, you know, massive Fall fan. I've been all my life. You know, So you know, I was kind of get a bit obsessed by it. But it's because of the realness, and he actually, there was a connection to, you know, my background, my cultural background, and that sort of, you know, heritage.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a connection to it. The the fall.
Yeah.
The music that we sang, and the kind of delivery and the, you know, and the lyrics and the kind of like
I always loved the delivery.
northern context. It came from a northwestern sort of voice context, not mid-Atlantic sort of thing, you know.
Yeah,
and
for
it was
sure.
like those bands, like, I'd say, you know, quintessentially English. I'm not talking about British English. So you've got kind of Madness, you've got the Kinks, you've got the Fall, you've got the first two Pink Floyd albums, and even the Jam, actually, probably the Jam.
But wouldn't you say there's an element of music hall in all of those things?
Oh,
that you
yeah,
said?
definitely.
Which is
Kinks.
English, isn't it?
The Kinks.
The Kinks. Madness as well. Come on.
Yeah, there was
so-
definitely musical. I don't know if it was musical in the Fall. But
Well,
I think you find it hard to
I
find
don't know.
something.
I'm going to think about that, and there might be. I always thought there was a little bit of music hall even in the Sex Pistols. A
Maybe.
tiny bit. Just that sort of
Yeah,
London, you know, capers
yeah.
sort of thing. But yeah, definitely the Kinks and.
So listen, I don't know. Are we all right to?
Yeah, of course.
Have you got,
Yeah.
Have you got one more?
No.
Can you
I'm
tell
going to
us
stop
something
it.
more?
No. I'm going to
Just
stop it
my
right
wife's
here.
downstairs.